Okay, hopefully this is recording or it's actually streaming. Welcome to another live episode of geekoutdoors.com. Never will get used to this, so let me go ahead and get this chat started. Looks like the stream is on. Okay, so today we're actually going to be talking about just two main subjects today. The first one is Airbnb rolling out a luxury rental program, and then the second one is how Linux, they actually need more mass consumers or more average users. And so let's go ahead and start with Airbnb luxury rentals because I really feel that this is something that is actually a sign of other things. Okay, hey, good morning, Lance, thanks for joining. And if for some reason, Lance, or anybody else who actually joins the chat, if for some reason you don't hear me, please let me know, because I have been having some issues whenever I do live streams on desktop. Let me make sure it works really quick.
Please.
Yeah, great. Okay, so let's first go ahead and start out with this Airbnb rolling out luxury rentals, because this actually expands into many other areas, and it's something that I have talked about every now and then, but I really think that it is important for other things. So what Airbnb is doing is they're actually going to be offering a luxury rental model. Okay, so if you've ever used Airbnb, then there's so many different things that you could do. You could get, you know, a residential home to rent, or you could get a condo, or there's so many things that you can get right here, right? But the whole luxury rental program, they're kind of doing what Uber has done. If you've ever taken an Uber, they have like their Uber X program, you know, where you could actually rent out cars or actually get a drive from very high-end luxury cars, and it does cost you more money. And so there's actually what they're doing here as well. And the reason why this is important is because Airbnb and a company like Uber, they are growing at a huge, astonishing rate. And not only that, but they actually signal where the entire economy is going, specifically in the digital age. Okay, and what I mean by that is whenever we think of hotels, right? We think of companies like Hilton or the Hyatt, or whenever we think about, you know, like taxi services, you know, we still think about taxis, physical cars and stuff, right? But what Airbnb and Uber has done is they've completely changed that whole model, and they've actually changed how we perceive, you know, things that are typically physical. Okay, and what I mean by that is if you actually think about what Airbnb and Uber have been able to achieve in such a short amount of time, Airbnb and Uber, as far as I know, like Airbnb doesn't have like physical hotels out there, okay, like say a Hilton or a Hyatt. And same thing for Uber as well. They don't have a fleet of taxi cars out there. Now later on they will be introducing their self-driving cars, but if you think about that and you think about their valuation, these companies are massive. Airbnb alone right now, if I'm not mistaken, they're worth like $31 billion. And that was as recent as last year, March 2017. They're probably even higher than that right now. And let me see if I could find a more recent one. No, maybe not, but still 30 billion, 31 billion, that is not a small amount. Now, if you actually compare that to Hilton Hotel, which has been around since what? A long time, maybe almost 100 years now, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, they've been around a long time, and their market cap is $26.8 billion. And they have actually thousands of employees. They have hotels all around the world. Look at all their different properties. If you actually look at their Hilton Worldwide, they have many, many different properties. And so how can a company which actually has no physical hotels... hey, good morning, Stephen Marin. Great, thank you. Lance, you are 5x5. I don't know what that means, Lance. Lance, I heard you can rent Liechtenstein, the whole country. Oh, I'm pretty sure you can if it's small. Okay. Hey, VM, how's it going? And so yeah, so if you just look at their valuation, right? I mean, $31 billion, and Airbnb started in 2008. Okay, let's see when Hilton started. Okay, let's see what year that they actually started. Because I'm pretty sure they've been around 1919. Yeah, almost 100 years. 1919 was when they were founded, 98 years ago. And just think about that. This company has been around nearly 100 years. They have thousands of employees, thousands of hotels, extremely high overhead. And then you compare something like Airbnb, which started in 2008, has virtually no employees except for the people who actually work on the back end, really, and maybe some customer service. They have zero, at least as far as this point, zero hotels that they actually have to manage, and their overhead is absolutely next to nothing, okay? But yet their valuation is actually higher than a hotel company that has been around for nearly 100 years. And so the same thing happens for Uber as well. Uber is, what, $72 billion for their valuation. As a matter of fact, I absolutely don't know of any taxi service that is even comes close to this. And once again, they don't have a fleet of taxis around the world. They don't have a fleet of employees, except for the people that primarily, once again, they work for the back end. And so what I'm really getting into this is the fact that because of our whole digital age and technology, we are actually moving into a world where we are more mobile, okay? Where the overhead to run business is a lot lower, where your ability to scale is absolutely crazy, okay? And this is something that I think is really important, and not only to us geeks, because you know, geeks, we have an advantage because we are in the technology space. And all of these companies, if you haven't noticed, the biggest companies, the ones with the most employees, or not actually employees, but the one with the most wealth, the one making the biggest moves, it's not physical companies, it's digital companies. And although the physical companies still, you know, make up the bulk of businesses, you know, especially blue chip stocks and so forth, that is really quickly changing, okay? Just think about other companies like Facebook, Google, Amazon. All these companies have not been around that long. And even if you think of Microsoft and Apple, even though they're the older companies, compared to something like an IBM, you know, their valuation is just absolutely crazy, okay? And so let me see what else they're saying. Hey, Carlos Henrique, thanks for joining. Good morning, Samuel. Thank you so much for joining. And so VM is saying just a few things are good over 100 years, like beer or whiskey. Good point, VM. Lance is saying the same thing. That's right. And let me show you why I think this is important. And I talk a lot about this on my channel, primarily through digital marketing. But I want to show you why this is the new economy. And you've probably heard this before. It's called the gig economy. Okay, and so the gig economy is something like this, and I'll show you. And I've done all of these, by the way, and I do continue to do some of them, whatever they make sense. And so, for example, Fiverr is one company that you're definitely familiar with. Okay, there's Fiverr, but there are other companies as well. If you go to places like a company that I use, you could also go to Conquer. There's also things like that website didn't show up. But there's also, you know, you could go to Freelancer. You know, you've probably seen this before, or Upwork. I've used Upwork before. I have also tried becoming a freelancer myself on Upwork. And so let me show you this as well. Okay, and then I've also done other things as well. I've also done freelance writing as well, like on sites like HireWriter. Okay, and there's also a freelancewriter.com as well. And then even beyond that, there's other things that you could do. It's called crowdsourcing work. Okay, I don't think that's the actual term, but let me show you what I mean by that. So this, Amazon MTurk, they are pretty much the largest crowdsourcing website as far as I know. And why this is important is because the whole, good morning, Roland. Thank you for joining. TaskRabbit, absolutely, TaskRabbit as well. So TaskRabbit is another one that you can use. And here's the thing, okay? For people who like geeks, they're probably familiar with this, okay? But there's a lot of people in the world who are not familiar with where the entire world is going, where the economies are going, where businesses are going. Okay, and why I wanted to talk about this is because, you know, maybe for the people here, maybe for the geeks, they are very familiar with it, or maybe they might be familiar. But for maybe people who are not aware of this, if you know that this is where the economies are going, where you could have companies that have no physical places pretty much, they don't have a fleet of employees, they're able to be valued higher and make more money than established companies. And also, most importantly, the fact that everything's going digital and it really goes towards more of geeks like us, we have an advantage. You know, and the advantage is we are already in the whole technology geek space. Okay, this is not going anywhere. This is not slowing down. And it's also changing the way the people work. Okay, so typically in the old days, you would actually go do this. You know, you would go to school, you would get a college degree, okay? And then you would go get a job and you would work at pretty much that one company for most of your life, okay? And then over years that changed, where instead of being in one company, maybe you might have 2, 3, or 4 companies, right? But now that's simply not the case, okay? Samuel is saying Elance guru. Yes, Samuel, Elance used to be, well, it's now Upwork. Upwork is now Elance. I was on Elance myself, and so that is now the website now. They actually combine Elance and there was another one. Crap, I can't even remember the name. It was Elance and it started with the O. I can't remember. Odes, that's right. Odes and Elance combined to form Upwork. So I was on there as well. And so let me see what else they're saying. Lance is saying, physical companies like those create actual jobs and are a real entity in the world. These virtual companies don't provide real jobs. Well, Lance, I disagree with that, because all you have to do is just look at the valuations of these companies. There's definitely people working. You know, I mean, there's definitely people getting paid, and there's definitely a ton of money going around. And so the definition of a real job has changed, you know, and the reason I could say that is because, just look, there's people making money off of it. So if it wasn't a real job or a real business, they wouldn't be around. You know, that's the honest truth. But I think I see what you're saying. Our concept of a real job is something physical. Okay, whereas in the new economy, the new world, that's not the case. And that's really why I really wanted to focus on this right here, because I'm in this space myself. And a lot more geeks, starting with geeks, will be in this space first. But then later on, if you think about 10 years from now, everybody's going to be doing this. Not because they want to, it's because that they have to. Okay, and VM is saying things like companies, hotels, all that stuff has been comfortable and not implementing new things like ERPs. When you show up, everybody wants to put a knife on your chest. VM saying, by the way, you should give Vivali a shot. Okay, VM saying, this isn't a good example, otherwise being a drug dealer would be a real job. Sector Zone 01, thank you so much for joining. Yeah, and so, and you know, VM, if you've ever worked in a large corporation, I have mentioned this before, it is really not easy for them to institute new systems, okay? It takes time, okay? But when you have a company like Airbnb or a company like Uber, when they are, you know, they're not really tied down by those current systems, they're able to move a lot quicker. And since they are online, and this is what I talked about a little bit earlier, is scalability. Okay, just think about it this way. If Hilton, right, or Hyatt, or any of these taxi companies actually wanted to expand, right, how would they do that? Well, they actually have to find a physical location to build their hotels. They have to get all the permits and licenses to build in that specific country. They have to go out and find employees. They have to worry about insurance, taxes, litigation. That's a lot of overhead, and it takes time. You know, it could take literally decades in some cases for these deals to go through. Whereas in something like an Airbnb or Uber, they don't need to go hire new employees because they have people like ourselves who are contractors. You know, we will use their service to go work for them and make some additional money. And so they don't even need to pay them health insurance and stuff because of the fact that they are not employees, okay? And they're able to scale really quickly. Of course, it's not easy everywhere because some countries, they have laws against certain type of businesses like Uber, for example. They've had a lot of resistance in countries like France. especially especially in European countries. And so it's a lot easier for these companies to scale, and their valuation is just crazy. And even if Airbnb and Uber went out of business tomorrow, they still have a ton of cash. Probably more cash than Hilton and Hyatt, I would say that. But that's not including all the other properties and assets that Hilton and Hyatt has. I'm just going based upon what the stock market values them at. And so let's go back to this. VM is saying it isn't easy because they want profit by exploiting their employees. Well, VM, the thing is, VM, I mean, employees or contractors who work for a company, they're not forced to go do that. Okay, you choose to go work at these companies. Nobody's forced to go work at wherever you want, right? And so it's your choice. But the reason why this is so important is we have more choices. That's the main thing I want to say. Because in the whole economy, you're not solely dependent on one place. In the old economy, if you actually had your one job, which most people did, what if you lost your job? That's it. I mean, let's just talk about before they had the internet. Before they had the internet, in a physical location, if the company went out of business, or there are other competitors that came, or maybe you just did not work well with that company and you lost your job, how else would you get a job? You would have to move to another physical location and hope that there's a job available, and maybe you might have to travel to a different country. Okay, and so back then, I think, even though it seems a lot safer, those things don't work anymore. Okay, nowadays you might have your one job, okay, or two jobs maybe, but then you would have to do other things online. You would actually have some other side business. Okay, so I've actually had side businesses as well. I've had physical businesses, and I've also do stuff online as well. And so there is more choices available to us in the new economy. And so that's why I really talk about this a lot, because I really think that it is important, once again, that geeks who do have a lot of these skills, or they have the technical mindset, or that they're actually in the whole internet tech space, we can move faster. Okay, and so right now, in my opinion, if you are in a situation where you have one job or maybe two jobs, I really recommend that you try to do things on the side. Okay, and I really recommend you start learning stuff and doing things online, because obviously that's where everything is and that's where everything's going. And then if you're the type of person who also does physical, just do both. Have a job, have a side gig, side hustle, and I recommend doing stuff online and then start building that up. Because even though at the beginning, because you are pretty much building a business, or you are self-employed, it takes time to do that. But once you do, then you're not dependent on one thing. Okay? Then you could scale a lot quicker. Then, most importantly, you would have built up the skills and experience to actually make yourself more valuable in the marketplace. Okay? And so VM saying, because the taxi work in Europe doesn't work for any company. Yeah, VM, my stepdad, he is actually a taxi driver. And so he goes through a lot of different issues. He's also been a taxi driver in France as well. He lives in France. I mean, he's French and US. And so I definitely agree. That's why there's so many challenges or problems with companies like Uber trying to get in there. And since my stepdad, he does work for a taxi, he has his own taxi business, it is very hard for them right now, and unfortunately, whenever things change in economies, if you remember, and I talked about this before, when we were in the agrarian age where a lot of people were farming, there's not that many farmers anymore. And then when we had the industrial age, a lot of people were working in factories. Not many people work in factories anymore. And then after that, we started moving over to the technology age, where more people work on computers and stuff, right? And then we have the internet age. Now we're going to the next stage. And so which is, to me, the artificial intelligence, the data information age. That's where I think we're going. And obviously, that's all tied to the internet. And so you could already see this, not only with the type of work that you have, but even with currencies as well. I've talked about Bitcoin before, just basically, but the whole blockchain technology and the technology underneath, it's really not the most important thing. It's what's happening, it's what's changing. And so the thing is, the earlier you know about these things, and most importantly, the earlier you actually start developing these skills and experience, the quicker you'll be able to adapt. because I can guarantee you, because all of these changes, and that's why I mentioned how we changed from the farming age to industrial through technology, through internet and so forth, is because it's not going to stop. And so if you don't adapt, then you will basically be those people who unfortunately will be unemployed and who sticks into poverty and who doesn't have the skills and experience that are actually valuable in that marketplace at that time. Okay, so that's why I really do talk about this more than one time, and I will talk about this more and more, because I really feel, once again, as geeks, we do have an advantage, and I really think that we should take advantage of the skills that we have and develop them, so then we won't be in this position later on. And another thing I love about this whole new economy, okay, and I love it because I could see the benefits of it, is because you could be independent physical wise. Okay, so if you do stuff online or you have side gigs, you could be anywhere in the world for the most part, as long as you have a good internet connection, as long as there aren't laws in place where you can still make money in different places. And so yeah, and so let me see what else it says. If VM is saying if you already have 1 or 2 jobs, you won't have a life. Well, VM, it really depends. Okay, I have had 3 jobs at one time before, and that is definitely not an exaggeration. I actually, when I was going to college, I actually had a job in a video store. I actually had a job at the school, and then I had one other job in a radio station at the school. So let me show you that real quick. Okay, let me see if I could find it right here, and I'll show you that this is actually what I did. Let me see. Okay, well, is that there? No. No, that's not it. Well, if I find it, I'll show you that it was not easy for me, is what I'm saying, whenever I actually did this. And, oh, let me see, KTXT, there it is. Okay, let me see if I could find some old pictures of myself when I was actually working 3 jobs. Let me see, no. Well, let me see, I won't be able to find it here. So, well, I don't remember where the picture was. There it is. So, this is when I actually worked at the radio station, if you can actually see that. No VM, there's no prawn there, but this is when I was actually going to college. And so when I was in college, not only was I a student, but I also worked at a video store. I also worked at a computer lab. I also worked at this radio station. I was actually basically managed all their computer systems to do radio. I was actually a DJ as well, like a DJ at night. And then I also worked for Hewlett Packard as well. And so I actually had 4 jobs. And so VM, it is definitely something that is possible, and it is achievable. And so basically, you're going to have to work more, but because we do have the internet, you could actually, you know, work a little more efficiently. Okay, and so if you say work smarter, not harder, well, you have to work hard and you have to work smart. Okay, and so that's really the point that I wanted to make here, and you probably, and maybe later on I'll show other pictures as well, whenever there's other things that I have done besides this stuff. Okay, so you just saw a little bit of what I did before, but there's many things that I've tried, and so I've done the whole physical thing. I've tried physical businesses. I've done online things as well, and so I just wanted to show you that this is where the economy is going because of this whole Airbnb thing. Okay, that's just a sign of things to come. And so let's go ahead and talk about the second bit of news, and that is Linux. They need more mass consumers, okay, or basically they need more average users. And this is something that I have mentioned before, where Linux needs to be, as a desktop, needs to be really user friendly for actual people. Okay, and not for like super uber geeks. Okay, and even though Linux is really, it was built originally for real technically minded people, the thing is that it's not viable if you actually wanted to capture a larger market. Hey, good morning, Rose. Thanks for joining. Hey, Gaza, thank you so much for joining. And let's go down here real quick. And so there's a really interesting article here. It's on Tech Republic, and what they're saying is to capture more of the desktop market, Linux needs to target the average user. And I completely agree. And if we actually look at all the different Linux distros, and us using Linux, we are used to this, it has become more user-friendly for the average users. That's for sure, you know. And let me see. So what are they saying? So before we had our command line interface. Let me see. So, okay, so here is drivers, installing an operating system. And so this is a point that this author makes, this writer makes, and I think it's definitely in line with what we already know. He says, let me make this clear. Modern Linux desktops are just as easy to use as any other platform. In fact, I'd go so far as to say that the likes of Elementary OS, Ubuntu, Linux Mint, and so many others are far easier to use than Windows 10. In fact, there's no competition there. I agree 1000% because I did do a video before where I said that Linux is easier than Windows, and I really mean that. You know, I really do think it's easier. And another reason why I think it's easier, at least modern Linux, is because we don't really need to use the command line interface for the majority of things. I would say like 95% of users, if you're using a distro like Linux Mint, Ubuntu, and Terragos, any Peppermint, you know, any of these, for the most part, you don't really need to get into the command line interface. Maybe like less than 5% of the time. Okay, the rest of it you could just use it, you know, just like a normal everyday computer. And here's another thing he's saying: Linux needs users, not zealots. Okay, and so I think I kind of talked about this before, where let me see, where I talked about people who are the Linux elitists. I think this is kind of what he's talking about here, where you have to use the command line. You know, you got to know everything about Linux, and if you don't, then you're an idiot or something, right? And so I think this is really what he's referring to here. But nowadays, you don't even need to be extremely technically, proficient to actually use Linux. Okay, and once you install it, which is basically pretty much the same as you installing Windows, I would say I'd still think it's easier. Then once you get it up and running, or say something like Linux Mint, you're good to go. Just use the internet, use all your programs. Obviously, you're going to have to change some of the programs that you use, but pretty much everything that you're able to do on something like a Windows or Mac, you could do here in Linux. And the great thing is there's a lot of software nowadays that are actually cross-platform that actually work on all of them. Okay, and right here, well, he's also talking about FUD being spewed by the likes of Microsoft, and FUD stands for fear, uncertainty, and I forgot what the D stands for, but basically it just scares people. Okay, and so I think you have two categories, and correct me if I'm wrong. One is misinformation by competitors like Microsoft, and Microsoft doesn't do that as much anymore because of the fact that they know that they've lost the battle when it comes to stopping Linux from growing. And then the second type of FUD, and this is a little bit different, is the Linux elitists, okay, where they might scare general users from actually using Linux because of the fact that they make people feel dumb not knowing a lot of things. Okay, and so I think it actually comes from two areas. But besides that, just the main fact that Linux, as we're seeing here, I'm able to do everything that I think the majority of people would use on their computers. I have no problems, and I'm so glad that articles like this are being written, and maybe a lot of people don't read this, but maybe they will, and then obviously YouTube channels like myself and many other people who use Linux, that they're actually spreading this type of news, and I have mentioned this before, but when it comes to Linux desktop, since we aren't a big multi-billion-dollar single entity corporation like a Microsoft or Apple, a lot of the marketing, and you know how I feel about marketing is essential, that a lot of the marketing is being done by us, the users. Thank you, Sector Zero Zone, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Thank you so much. And so, as you can see here, we, as the users, and I think, in my opinion, when the best type of marketing is the marketing where it's the word of mouth. Okay, we have heard that before. Word of mouth marketing is nothing new. It's been around way before the internet. But the great thing about the internet is if you produce a product or service that a lot of people like and that are valuable, not only do you get the word of mouth marketing, but you're able to use technologies like YouTube or social media to really leverage this and get the word out. Whereas before, when the only way that you could market things was through traditional means like TVs, newspaper, radio, you know, it's a lot easier for us to actually market and spread the word of Linux, which is absolutely awesome. And so I'm really glad to see things like this, okay, where they make it really easy, articles or other content. It just tells people, hey, you know, it's not super complex. You could do a lot of the same things that you would do on your Microsoft Windows or your Apple Mac OS machine. And my belief is it's not a zero-sum game, okay? And what I mean by that is you don't have to use either Windows, Mac, or Linux. You can use all of them, you know? And that's the one thing that I've mentioned so many times is that, you know, if you like these tools, just use whatever makes you happy. You know, just use whatever works well for you. And whenever, you know, whenever more and more of this knowledge goes out, I think people will be more inclined to at least try out Linux as a desktop. I mean, first and foremost, they know that it's not super complex. Secondly, you know, as they're using it more and more, they'll realize that, you know, a lot of what they thought they needed on these other operating systems, they don't really need because these same tools are available in Linux, you know, especially since a lot of our tools are actually online based now. They're all cloud based. Okay, and then the third thing is, in my opinion, at least from my experience, as you're using this more and more, you'll realize that you could still use the other operating systems and you won't feel bad, okay? Because, you know, I think we've seen this before where, you know, you start using Linux and then for some reason, and correct me if I'm wrong, for some of you who have used Linux for a long time, sometimes you feel guilty when you go back to Microsoft Windows, okay? But then over time, honestly, it doesn't bother me because I have said this before, but these software, these operating systems, they're just tools. You know, you just use the right tool that's best for you. And if you really like these tools and you want to share the actual things that you benefit out of, then create content for it. You know, go on social media, you know, write articles like this. There's ways that you could actually spread the news and not feel guilty about using these other tools. Okay. And so let me see what else they're saying here. Gaza, okay, let me see, it does not work. Okay, I'm still going down. Well, okay, so, okay, let me go to this. VM is saying, for those small companies that produce PCs for Linux are expensive as F and don't get to be as powerful as a Microsoft designed PC can be. Yeah, VM, it's harder because obviously they don't have the resources and the money to actually get the highest quality materials, okay? And I wish that, you know, like if you look at the modern laptops now, in my opinion, ever since the UEFI came in with Microsoft, and I understand the benefits of it, you know, not only from the potential security of getting your bootloader, but also getting larger storage capacities, right? I get that, okay? But at the same time, it makes it harder for us to put Linux on some of these operating systems. Okay, so I really hope that in the future, they still make it easy for us to get other operating systems on their machines. And I hope it doesn't turn into like an Apple scenario where unless you're using Apple hardware, you can't put their operating system on there. You know, that would be the worst case scenario. Okay. So Roland Cooper, oh, thanks Roland for joining. I don't know if I said thank you for joining, but I can't see a happy ending with the way things are going. Humanity needs to work together towards a common goal instead of working against each other. You know, Roland, that is a really complex area because, you know, one person going against each other could be perceived as going towards something together. And so I don't really have a good answer to that. I just think as humans, humans are, you know, we're naturally destructive. You know, I mean, I don't think we'll ever have this utopian society that everybody gets along and everybody likes each other. And honestly, that's probably not a world you want to live in, because if you did, then everybody's exactly the same. And there would be no reason for you to improve or get better because you wouldn't know what it feels like to have it bad. you wouldn't know what poverty is like, okay? And so if you don't know what the bad parts are, then you really won't know what it takes to improve. You know, what would happen if you did better things, okay? That's just my general opinion. But I mean, I will say that I hope that humanity as a whole, the one common goal is, you know, they just try to make things better, okay? And that could be different for everybody, okay? But I really think it starts with you as an individual. This is my personal opinion. A lot of people, in my opinion, in general, they try to change the world. They try to change all these big things, but I really think you should try to change yourself first, okay? Because if you change yourself and you make yourself better, then everything around you gets better as well. Whereas if you try to change the whole world and you haven't really done anything to improve yourself, then it makes it way harder, you know. And so that's not a different tangent, but that's my opinion on that. Okay, Rose is saying MX and Peppermint is easy for beginners also. Trying out Arch Merch. Yep. Rose is saying just buy a used laptop and desktop. Yeah, that's actually what I did, Rose, as well. I bought a used laptop. Gaza is saying it's still temperamental. It's not guaranteed to work on every platform, else you'll be stuck with System 76 for a complete customer service experience. Yep, Sector Zone is saying that, okay. Gaza is saying it does not work for all used laptops and desktops. Yes, Gaza, you're right, it doesn't. Yeah, but at least if you buy a used laptop or desktop, you aren't spending as much money, in my opinion, at least right now. And then Gaza saying if Dell, HP, Lenovo, then you have a better chance. Yep. Let me see. Rose is saying used laptop, desktop has no problems. Self-builds are problematic. They can be, definitely. Gaza's thing with Dell. Yes, I have an old Dell laptop as well, Gaza. And I also have a Toshiba and an HP. And so I have all different machines. And you're right. I mean, for some reason, it really depends on the manufacturer. Some manufacturers it's easier to get Linux on than others. And also it depends on the age of the actual laptop and desktop as well, because the newer ones I think it's just more difficult, whereas the older ones it's way easier. VM saying the most clear example is the instance for gaming on Linux totally sucks. Yes, gaming on Linux still is not great, but it has gotten better. But if you are a serious gamer, then definitely you're gonna have to have a Windows machine nearby. So if you're an Apple user, you still have the same problem. So Rose is saying you can look at the hardware specs of System 76 Purism and perhaps build your own system using specs. Gaz is saying Steam is excellent. I agree. Let me see. Wow, there's a lot of stuff here. So VM is saying I can challenge you to have a Linux machine designed to game on top performance as on Windows. Gaz is saying System 76 is a wannabe Apple. You know, Gaz, I think System 76, I do really appreciate the work that they're doing because of the fact that it's hard. You know, it's very challenging to make money in the whole Linux desktop environment. Okay, now Linux servers, Linux services, that's different. You could definitely make money there. Okay, but when it comes to Linux desktops, well, most people don't use Linux desktop, and most people don't even know what the Linux desktop is unless they ran into articles like this or they watch YouTube channels like this one right here. And so checked out System 76 Star Labs. They all suck on price and performance. Yeah, they can't really afford scale. They can't afford the best hardware. Let me see. Shatter saying, oh, thank you, Shatter. I think I said hi to you, Shatter. Let me see. Try to find a PC designed for Linux where you could game on high performance and have servers and VMs like I need to. God's saying, I don't buy the tools argument. Yeah, that's just my opinion, Gaza. That's what I see it as. You know, I even feel like money is a tool as well. Because in my opinion, if you see them as just something that you can use, then you're not so tied to it, you know, and then you also don't get really emotionally too invested in it, you know, because these tools or these software, they could change at any time, you know. And so that's just my opinion. So the more tools I have, the more choice and freedom that I have. Very similar to the Linux distros, you know, we have choice. I always like choice. That's my opinion. Okay. VM is saying, okay, there's not possible. Hi, Shatter. Okay, I'm going to go down. VM saying communism. Okay. Guys saying I prefer egalitarian society instead. Sector Zone, I'm not one for conformity. Yeah, Sector Zone, I'm the same way. I am not one for conformity as well. Okay, but unfortunately, in the whole scheme of things, most governments, institutions, companies, they do want you to conform because it's a lot easier to control you. Okay, and there's definitely a need for systems. Okay, if we did not have systems and rules, we would have anarchy. But at the same time, you know, there has to be a middle ground. So I agree with you that I don't want to be conform as much as possible. Okay, I still definitely would love choice and freedom. VM is saying the whole world was a massive crisis. USSR had IBP growing, so competition isn't actually required to be innovative and improve. Yeah, I really don't. I really disagree with that, VM, because if you do not have competition and innovation, then you could easily have things like a monopoly, you know, where you don't have any improvement and you can't try to do things better, okay, because nobody else is trying to do anything better, right? So you're just lazy, basically, you know. Just all you have to do is look at any of these companies or technologies. If they did not have other companies and competitors, they wouldn't have no reason to improve, you know, and they could charge you as much as you want. Like I said, you could have a monopoly, okay. And let me see. Okay, Roland, in my humble opinion, I think there's some FUD regarding who takes over when Linus Torvalds passes away. Yeah, Roland, I think, in my opinion, with the whole Linux world, it's not one person, okay? And this is very similar to a business, right? Because it works the same way. Businesses should not rely on one person, you know. They should have a system built, you know, to where if one part fails, and if you think about technology as well, you know, or software, you have fail-safe, right? If you're programming, you want to have something to catch errors, you know, error checking, error handling, you know. Same thing with systems, whether it be technology or business systems, you know. So if Linus Torvalds was actually to pass away, which he will, Linux will still keep going because it already has systems in place. There's thousands and thousands of people within the community. There's people managing it. So, you know, that's the great thing. You know, if you think about any of these great companies or any of these great businesses, you know, they're still running because of the systems that they have in place. Okay, for the majority of it, you know, if you don't have a good structure and system in place, of course, it's going to completely fall apart. Okay, just look at something like Apple with Steve Jobs. Even though Steve Jobs was an iconic marketer, he was revered and often vilified by people as well, the company's still running. You know, some people might say they're going down, but you know, they are worth almost, you know, $1 trillion, and they have more than almost $200 billion of cash in the bank. So yeah, they're not going anywhere because of the fact that they have systems and processes in place. And so Shatter's saying, yeah, oh, and Roland, what you were saying is there was FUD. I see what you're saying. There was all of this not bad, or just really scary stuff going around to say that it's going to be bad for Linux whenever Linux passes away. So shout to say, not certainly. Torvalds only trusted a few peeps for his Linux works. Yeah, but I definitely think we'll be okay, y'all. I mean, not only just for the open source Linux community, but let's not forget, Linux is big business. The majority of servers, the majority of companies that are backing the Linux Foundation, they're not small companies. Okay, I mean, you got Google, you have Microsoft, right? You have Facebook. They have a vested interest, and nobody's going to stop using Linux if somebody, you know, if the founder passes away. They're not, because it's not just about one person, you know, and it's not even just about one community, the open source community. There is a lot of businesses, there's a lot of governments, there's a lot of institutions that rely on Linux. All your Android phones have a Linux kernel, and so obviously it has a huge vested interest. And so Linux is not going anywhere. If I had to say, that it's just going to evolve. And so and you know, whenever Linus Torvalds, whenever that day comes that he does pass, it will be a sad day, because I think that Linus Torvalds, he's a person that I think, in my opinion, okay, he doesn't get the type of recognition that somebody like a Steve Jobs or a Bill Gates would, right, or a Mark Zuckerberg, okay. And I hope that whenever that day does come, that he will be remembered. And also, let's not forget Richard Stallman, because, you know, without those two things, we would not have the Linux operating system. Okay, let's not forget that. But their contribution, and I want to go back to Linus Torvalds, if they did not create that, our world would be a completely different place. I mean, I think, in my opinion, Linux as a whole, it's probably the single greatest piece of technology besides the internet, okay, that I would put Linux second to that, okay, because it's done so many things, it continues to do so many things, And at the same time, you can look at it from so many levels. You know, you could look at it from an open source community level. You could look at it from a business level. You could look at it from a learning level. You could look at it from an economic level. Governments and institutions, how many people are benefiting from this. There's absolutely so many areas where Linux and you know, the creation of Linux kernel by Linus Torvalds has benefited the world, and will continue to do so. And so Sector Zero Zone is saying, my only fear with Linus or Linux passing would be if the next person would be stubborn enough to keep unnecessary stuff out of the kernel. Yes, Sector Zero Zone, you know, like I said, it's not one person, okay? And like I said, there's so many companies, there's billions, and if you include stock markets which use Linux servers, there's trillions of dollars involved in this. Trust me, they're not going to let this fail, and it's embedded into so many areas. It's absolutely impossible for it to go away now. Let me see. People love slavery instead of selfness. For Linux desktop would take a while when the slavery mentality to truly overcome. Yeah, Shatter, I don't think it's gonna go anywhere. You know, I really don't. Okay. Like I said, because let's be real. You know, there's money involved. Okay. If there's not money involved, it wouldn't matter. Okay. Just look at any other open source project where there is no business money involved. Most of them are not around. Okay, most of them are struggling. But Linux, that's not the case. There's billions and trillions of dollars involved. And so, yeah, so that's good not only for the people who are in the open source space, but it's good for proprietary, it's good for businesses, it's good for government institutions, it's good for everyone. Okay, so that's why I think Linus's contribution is amazing. Okay, it's absolutely amazing what him and once again Richard Stallman has done for the whole world, and not just in the tech space. And just look right here at the whole members area. Okay, these are not small companies. Look at that. So let me see what we have here. AT&T, Cisco, Fujitsu, Microsoft, IBM, Oracle, Intel, Samsung, VMware, and then we have other companies like Baidu, Toshiba, Toyota. We have a few Linux companies. SUSE is here. Look at all these companies. ADP, Adobe, so Amazon Web Services, AMD. And so as you can see there, it is a combination of different companies. Okay, and that's one thing that I do talk about very often. I don't, like I said, I don't take this open source or proprietary or business or no business approach. You know, I really feel it's a combination of both. You need both. And as you can see clearly here by the Linux Foundation, they're not stupid. They know that it needs both as well. And so you need both big business and small businesses. You need both open source and proprietary. And, you know, in order to make this work for everyone, okay, or at least for the majority of people out there. Okay, and so, yeah, MS is a platinum donor. Yeah, and so it might not fail, but it will become paid. I could see that coming. Well, Linux is already being monetized. You know, Red Hat Linux, okay, Ubuntu Enterprise Services for Amazon Web Services. And also, if you think about the Linux kernel on Android, even though we don't pay for the kernel, they're making money off the services that Linux provides. I'm making money right now off my Linux desktop, right? I didn't pay for the desktop, but I'm using it to make money. I'm using it to do all my daily stuff, okay? And you are too. And so there is a monetary component to this, okay? So for everything, yeah, I don't think for everything, VM, if that's what you're saying, yeah, you're right. Yeah, it will. Well, I have said this before, VM, that more of the internet, it will be paid. Okay, in the future, you're going to have to pay just to get on the internet. And we already have that in some cases. You know, you have, I think like in the UK, I can't remember if it's in the UK, where it's a metered system. Okay, and it's kind of metered over here too. But in the future, not only will you have to pay for your internet service, but you're going to have to pay for pretty much every website that you go to. Okay, it'll be gated. Okay, very much like we have right now. Okay, in the whole physical world, where most places you have to pay, right? I mean, you just don't get everything for free. And so the internet world is changing to that as well. And so just look forward to that. I know not everybody's going to be happy with that, but you know, just like everything I talked about earlier, how we are transitioning from one economy, one world to a different type of world, we're going to change here as well. And so in the future, you will have to pay for pretty much everything. Okay, and so everything's going to be expensive. So shots are saying mainly Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Facebook, and some government orgs will continue the progress. Yeah, and you know, shots are I have said this before, but you know, entrepreneurship entrepreneurs, they rule this world, you know. And because, you know, in order for you to do big things, you really need resources. You need to be big to do it. Okay, there's really no way around that. All of these companies started out as small companies, and I can guarantee you when they were small companies, they could not do as many things as they do now as a big company. Okay, but all of them had to start at a small company, and it takes a long time for most things to get to this level. And now they have made it to big levels. They do have more power and influence to do things, okay, because they work themselves from small to big. Okay, so there's a lot of things in between there, but you get my point, you know. That's why a lot of, whenever you see big things happen, it's normally not because of small companies. It's normally because of big companies who were once small companies. And so VM is saying it must be free. Well, yeah, VM, unfortunately, it's not going to be. Roland saying, even Brian Londo called out the head of Linux Foundation for using Mac OS. And, you know, Roland, I mean, you know, that's really up to you. You know, I'm not going to judge people one way or another. That's your choice, you know, whatever you feel about it. I mean, for me, my choice is I like having choices. Okay, and regardless of what it is, I'm not really in that whole mindset where because I use something that everybody should use what I'm using, you know, or use it this way. And if you don't, then you're wrong. Okay, I don't agree with that. That's really against the whole point of you having freedom. Okay, so freedom means you get to choose what you want. You get to think the way that you want. And so even if it's from an open source community where they're saying Microsoft is bad, you're a bad person if using that, or Mac OS, well, that just takes away my freedom to choose. Okay. But that is my opinion, okay? So I'll always say this on my channel, you know, if whatever tools and stuff that you want to use, that is up to you. You know, I really feel that you are smart enough to think for yourself, you know, be an independent thinker, you know, that's the whole point of freedom, okay? My opinion, okay? And so VM is saying, besides, even if Linux doesn't allow to fail, it won't be allowed to be ahead of anything else. Yeah, VM, it really depends on what area that you're looking at, okay? Because there's always going to be opportunities for people who could see them and take advantage of them, just like these companies have right here. Okay, so Shatter say free isn't the business model or standard. Yeah, Shatter, I mean, I think, yeah, free, it can be, okay, but there's got to be a way to make money out of it, okay? Just think about what we're using right now. YouTube is free, right? But they monetize it, you know, they're business, okay? You have to think about how do you keep the money coming in so that you could keep your business going, okay? Like I myself, I want to keep doing Geek Outdoors. I want to keep creating content, you know? And so I need to learn how to run it as a business and monetize it, okay? Because otherwise, what other choices do you have? Well, the only other choice you have is to go back and work for another business in a job. That's your only other choice. Okay, and so if you are creating content, okay, that's why I really believe in you got to learn how to monetize this. You have to make money from this, you know, because if you don't, you can't continue doing it. You'll go back to a job, basically. And so, and that's definitely not the only way to do things nowadays, is what I mentioned earlier. And so if you are going to be a content creator, I recommend that you definitely learn how to do the business side, how to monetize. Okay, because just think about it. If you don't, you won't be able to continue doing what you enjoy. Okay, you'll go back to a job and a job only. Okay, and so there's nothing wrong with a job, but if you're thinking that you're going to keep doing stuff for free and not monetize it, well, just look forward to working in a job because you're not going to be able to make money. Okay, and so I feel really strongly about that if you really enjoy doing something, figure out ways to make money so that you can continue doing what you enjoy. Okay, so that's why when I see like people making money off of their stuff, I'm happy for them because now they're able to do more things that they love. Otherwise, like I said, just go back to your job, you know, and then continue doing stuff for free on your free time as a hobby, you know, while you work at a job for the rest of your life. Okay, and so let me see, VM saying, otherwise it could be solved the human way by bombing people. Unfortunately, yeah, humans are very violent and destructive. Okay, so Shach is saying, Brian really knows Linux, IDTS, he wasted, I'm not sure what IDTS stands for, Shacher. I don't really understand. He wasted my 7 hours doing unprepared Gentoo installation. Rolling Cooper, nowadays, he's pretty out of context. Yeah, Shata, I don't really watch a lot of Linux channels, but once again, you know, I really feel that everybody has their different viewpoints, and you know, whatever that they're doing, I really think it's up to them, and then up to the audience that they have, because there's a lot of people who love what he does, you know, and he's done a lot for the community. And so I really feel that it's up to the content creator, and then up to the audience that are there, because I know that the audience that's here, I absolutely love y'all for being here, for supporting me for so many videos. But I also know that you are human beings, you know, you are independent, you know, you think for yourself. And so a lot of times in our conversations, there's not always an agreement, you know, because you have your own thoughts, and you know, and sometimes I definitely do not agree, but at the same time we're able to have a discussion, you know, and that's what I really love about it. Okay, it's just not like, oh, you're stupid or whatever, you know. It's just like, no, that's your thoughts, and I appreciate that. And so I always want to tell all of y'all, I do very much appreciate your conversations, your thoughts and ideas. We don't have to agree on everything. We don't have to disagree on everything. And I love that, okay? And I really do want to say, and I have mentioned this before to a lot of the people who have been here around here a long time, I really feel that the people here, in my opinion, y'all are like really smart people, okay? I mean that really. Y'all are extremely intelligent people, and I like that fact. I like talking to intelligent people, okay? And so, Shatter saying money, reality, nuts and bolts of everything. Yeah, and you know, Shatter, I have said this before, and you know, money is, to me, it's just a tool. And so I think what's more important is your knowledge, the experience and skills that you learn, because if you learn how to make money, right, then you can make money no matter what. You're not controlled by money. Money is just there for you to create because you know how to create it. And that's why super wealthy people, they don't worry about it, okay? They don't worry about money because they have this here, which they could make money anytime that they want. That's more valuable than money, because money is absolutely worthless, just the physical stuff itself. And if you live in a country where your economies are not stable, then it's fiat currency. But the people who are wealthy, meaning they have the knowledge and mindset, it doesn't matter where they go. They could always make money. And so I think that right here is more important than any of this physical money or paper, because that could go away. Okay, just look at lottery winners, right? Most lottery winners go bankrupt within 5 years. Why? Because they don't have this. They didn't learn how to actually grow wealth, okay? And so Shatter saying, I don't think so, IDTS. Personal preferences are the universal facts, nor scientific. Yeah, as Serge and Eric knows Gen 2 Shatter, but you know that. Okay, so I think I'm gonna go ahead and end off the episode. It has been about an hour. And so I will say one thing, y'all. You might have noticed this on my channel, but my live videos, every now and then you see that I'll re-upload them, because right now I'm having some weird issues with YouTube, where whenever I do a new live video, and you see this maybe with this video, my last live video gets deleted. Okay, and I might do a follow-up video on this. I've been working with this with YouTube support for like a month now, and they don't know what's going on, or at least that's what they tell me. And so if you do see an older live video being re-uploaded, it's because that last one got deleted. That's why I'm re-uploading it. So I'm trying to figure this out, so kind of bear with me. And so like Shatter was saying, hey, you know, is this a new stream or something? I missed it. No, it's just that I had to re-upload it because the last one I had got deleted. And so I will probably make a video on that, so that anybody else who is a YouTube content creator, and they have the same problems I have, or maybe they have a solution that maybe we could find a way to fix that. Okay, and so let me see. Thanks for the show, Gold. Thank you, Lance. Thank you, Rose. KI2A. Hey, late again, no problem. So before I go, let me always do the thing that I always do first, is I want to thank everybody who's on this live episode. First and foremost, my regulars, Lance, Rose, Gaza M, Shatter, Millennium, and new people as well, or some newer people. I've seen them on other episodes before. Samuel S, Roland Cooper, Sector Zero Zone. Let me keep going down. And if I miss you, my apologies. Let me see. I think that is it. Okay. So and KI2 and E. another regular, been here a long time. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and everybody else who is watching this live stream. Thanks again. And I also want to say thank you to anybody else who actually watches my videos later on, okay, who are watching this later on from this video episode. And so if you had any thoughts on anything that I talked about here, be sure to leave it in the comments area below. And if you did get value out of these videos, be sure to subscribe as well. And if you did want to support my channel further, you could do that at patreon.com/geekoutdoors.